Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And today's session is all about how we break into the Salesforce freelancing world, the tips and tricks, and how to be a successful freelancer and how to make yourself more visible and much, much more. And you're going to hear a lot of these from Bradley Rice. Bradley has over 10 years of experience as an admin, a consultant, and he has also been running his own consulting firm, Honest IT, for the past 5 years. And he's also the founder of Talent Stacker, which is a platform to help individuals landing in their Salesforce career first jobs and also advancing their Salesforce careers. And this is a joint event in collaboration with SheForceWit. Just a little bit about me. And I am Jyotsna Bitra. I go by the name JB. I am the founder of Impact Force and also the co-leader of Salesforce Marketers Group Phoenix. And the mission of the Impact Force is to provide a platform to learn from the leaders, help you grow in your career, and also to inspire the community. All the sessions in the Impact Force series are focused towards the improvement of our soft skills. And Akhilesh, you want to go and introduce yourself?
JB, thank you so very much, audience and the attendees, to joining for today's event. So my name is Akhilesh and I'm an experienced professional and I'm currently a full-time MBA student at Boston. I'm a founder of two courses, one of them being SheForceWit, which is a global WIT organization, and HeartForce Global, which is a student-focused community. Thank you so much, JB.
Thank you, Akhilesh. And here are a couple of sessions that we have hosted under the Impact Force series. There are a great number of sessions, which is like a toolkit for you to improve on the soft skills that are needed to establish your career and to make yourself more visible. Some of the sessions are how to network, how to create a brand for yourself, how to improve your LinkedIn visibility, how to prepare for the interviews, how to make your resume more look more standout. Many more sessions that we have conducted under the Impact Force series session. You can also find all these recordings at the YouTube channel Trailblazing Together. I will also be sharing the link to the YouTube channel in the chat window in a couple of minutes. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The session is being recorded and we will upload it to the YouTube channels at the earliest possible. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat window and we will answer them at the end of the session. And you're all muted during the session. We will unmute after the session and during the Q&A. And please feel free to unmute yourself and add more details or ask them directly to Brad. And now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Bradley. Bradley, I'm gonna stop my screen share and make you the presenter. You can take it over from here.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So I know everyone here has been informed that we're going to be talking about Salesforce freelancing. And first, I'll say that even though I titled this Salesforce Freelance, I prefer to call freelancers independent consultants. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's important, but it is important. And in this presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through with you some of the major mental obstacles that a lot of people have when they're talking about going into Salesforce freelancing, what stops them. It's a lot of things that stopped me for years from breaking into this. And then once I realized the opportunity that's there and it's not that difficult, not to say that it's not difficult because it is a challenge and there are things to overcome, but it's not nearly as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And we'll talk through some of those obstacles that a lot of people struggle with when getting into freelancing. Other things we'll talk about are completely free content that's available. There's not a lot now. There's Trailhead for Salesforce Learning in particular, but there's not a whole lot of free content around Salesforce freelancing. So I think coming to events like this are wonderful ways to learn more about freelancing. And then, of course, watching the recordings of presentations like this. And of course, just reaching out. And I put my LinkedIn profile in the chat here in the call. And so I encourage everyone, please reach out to me. Don't be shy about it. Send me a message, ask me questions. If I respond to you, you're not bothering me. It means I found time to respond, and I do respond to everyone. So feel free to message me there. Sometimes it might take a little longer than other times, depending on how many messages I'm getting, but I'm happy to respond to everyone. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. And I think at the end of this, hopefully we'll have some time for a Q&A. So I'll sort of push through and get the information out to you. And then I would love for you guys to ask any questions you have. Please do not refrain or try to be politically correct or whatever with your questions. I'm happy to share anything and everything. So take advantage of the fact that we are all sitting here together on a call and ask any questions that you have. So Salesforce Freelance, make money leveraging the skills you already have. So we'll talk a little bit about, I hear a lot of Salesforce professionals saying, they're making some money on the side by driving an Uber or doing a food delivery service or walking dogs. And the first thing I think of is, why would you ever do something like that to make money when you already have amazing skills that are in extremely high demand, where you can make 5 or 10 times as much money as you ever will doing things like that? And so if you're interested in making some money on the side, freelance is a great way to go. If you're interested in pivoting out of full-time work into part-time work, freelance is a great way to go. So we'll talk a little bit about the details there, but first let me tell you, if you don't already know who I am, then let me tell you a little bit about myself. All right, so the reason I put this information together is to tell you, number one, why at least I think I'm a credible source of this information. But number two, why I don't think I was necessarily, I was definitely privileged in my upbringing, but I don't think I was necessarily, brought up to be a Salesforce freelancer or to be good at any sort of tech. So I grew up, as many of you know, I grew up on a farm in West Georgia, doing cattle farming. We did not have computers in our home. It was like we had typewriters and stuff like that. And my mom had a job where she needed a computer, but she would just use it for work. And we didn't really have exposure to computers. So I got my first personal computer at 18 years old. That's when I was getting ready to go to college, and we sort of shelled out money and realized, okay, you should probably have a computer if you're going to go to college. And this was back in 2007 or 8, that would have been. I got my first job out of college as a junior Salesforce administrator. I had no idea what Salesforce was. I went to school for economics. I thought I was going to be a financial advisor or something like that. I also wanted to be a teacher, so I had a couple of ideas. But those did not pan out. And I consider it fortunate that those did not pan out, because now I get to do what I do today, and I truly enjoy it. And I became a junior Salesforce admin. I had no idea what it was. By the next year, I stopped working at the company that had given me my start. And it was all, very handled really well. Everybody was sort of excited for the transition, and they had sort of groomed me to learn these things and to know these things so I could go off and become a consultant. So I went into a junior Salesforce consulting role for a mid-sized firm. And I worked there for about a year before moving to another firm. And I was a senior solution architect for that company for about 3 years. From there, I moved out of full-time work because my daughter was on the way. And for me personally, the decision was I would like to work part-time and spend more time with my daughter instead of working the consulting firm hours, which are very typically 40 to 50 hours per week. Sometimes you'll have a slow month, and we can get into that, but you might work 30 hours a week on some nice weeks, but otherwise you should expect to work 40 to 50 hours in consulting. And then I started getting into, so I did freelance consulting on my own, and I started with one client and I was making, I took a pretty substantial pay cut. I cut my income in half to go from full-time consulting to freelance consulting, but I only had one client and I only worked about 10 hours a week for that client. And so I was happy to have my pay cut in half to do that. And from there, I was able to ramp back up to anywhere from 15 to about 25 hours a week is what I worked. So I was able to get a very comfortable part-time schedule at 15 to 25 hours a week. And in that time period, I did ramp my income up to the most I ever made was $225,000 working a part-time schedule, doing freelance consulting. But I would say the average was probably about $175,000 a year, working 15 to 20 hours a week. So in my opinion, not bad, and far more than I ever expected to make going into freelancing. So now comes the point where about a year and a half ago, I decided to start really leaning into helping other people with their Salesforce careers. I was seeing the success that I was having, and I didn't think it was fair that other people were struggling because they had Salesforce skills, but they either couldn't land a job, or they had Salesforce skills and wanted to make more money, but they were sort of plateauing in their Salesforce careers. And I realized, I think I didn't see anyone else helping with this. I saw people doing how to get certifications and things like that, and certification practice exams and study prep, but I didn't see anyone really taking a targeted approach to help people either land jobs or take the jobs they already have and take those to the next level. So that's where I thought, you know what, I think I can do something here to really help people with the knowledge that I have. And admittedly, I don't know much about a whole lot of things, but I do know quite a bit about Salesforce and the career and ecosystems and things like that. So I figured, I think I can use my knowledge to actually help people. So let's jump into actual freelance information now. So a lot of people ask, why would I freelance? And am I even capable of doing freelancing? And I think the first thing I'll say is forget everything you think you know about Salesforce freelancing is what I'll start with. Because the things you think you know, these are stories that you may have told yourself just because you feel like an imposter, you feel like you're not good enough. These may be isolated stories that you've heard from other people, maybe a friend or family member, or even yourself. Maybe you had a bad experience and now you're sort of, so I'm getting a little feedback. Are you guys getting feedback? Sorry.
Yeah, I as well listen to that echo. I see that everybody is muted, Bradley. I'm just checking up if there's anything that's coming in. As of now, it's only you and me who are unmuted.
Okay, let me see.
It seems to be good now.
Okay. If it starts again, we can take a break and I'll go grab a pair of headphones. But
okay.
Yeah, so what I see are people, a lot of times they're not even open-minded to move into Salesforce freelancing because they feel some sort of constraint there. They got burned by one bad project, or they tried to get started, but they went to Upwork and that didn't work out. They got a client, but the client didn't pay, or they tried to find clients, but they could never get anyone to sign a contract with them. And there are all these stories that come up that can cause us to stop doing things. And it's the same with pretty much everyone else. Or everything else. It's like, I tried to exercise, but then I hurt my leg, so I can't run. I tried to go on a diet, but then I didn't have any energy, so I stopped doing that. And we try things one or two times, and then we sort of find this great excuse that we can latch onto, and we just give up. So what I'm saying is, forget all those excuses, forget everything that you've heard. Let's try to relearn what freelancing is and how we can have success now that you actually have, hopefully, someone in front of you who can give you some guidance. So utilize skills you already have. And this is a big one. So like I mentioned before, there's no need to go try to find other things to do or try to find side hustles or other things you can do to make money, because you already have Salesforce skills. And these are some of the most marketable and highest paid skills in the world. I mean, truly, probably top 10%, top 20% for sure of skills that you could have that are worth, getting paid for. So don't go off trying to think what other company you're going to start or how you're going to do something completely different or sell things on eBay or whatever it is. Forget all that. Let's think about the skills we already have and how to utilize those. So what I'm going to do is show you a few thumbnails of people who have already had success in this space. And these are people that we've worked with. And there are plenty more stories, but I just wanted to point out a few that we've shared publicly. And there's people, and the reason I point this out is because these are different people from different walks of life. Like right here in the middle, Sonia Kolaw, she had not worked a professional Salesforce job. A lot of people think, well, you've got to be this consultant who's been in the space for 3, 4, 5 years before you could ever dream of doing freelance. And it's just not true. So Sonia got her first certification, and 3 months later, she got her first client. And this was all during the pandemic just last year. So her story is basically she, had a friend who told her about Salesforce. She got her certification and she was looking for full-time jobs, but she ended up trying to find freelance gigs as well. And she was able to find some very high-paying, stable clients. And now she's able to extend on that. And she'll likely never go into a full-time role because, as you're going to find out, freelancing pays far more than working full-time for an employer. And then we have people like Mark Berry, who was a Salesforce expert, but he got very interested in Zapier as a simplified integration tool. And it turns out there's a lot of companies that are scared of tools like Zapier, and they're scared of some of these third-party tools like DocuSign. And what he did is, instead of focusing on Salesforce specifically, he focused on this ancillary skill that he had found. But he was able to find freelance clients because of his Salesforce skill, and then tell them about Zapier, and then make an entire career out of basically just doing Zapier integrations on the Salesforce platform. There are other people like Galame, and he actually is a United States non-national, but what he did is he utilized the techniques and strategies for freelancing in order to, we hear that, okay, well, some countries or some locales don't make as much money as, say, the United States or Canada or Australia in the Salesforce space. And that's true. And there's a lot of truth to that. The great thing about freelancing is a lot of these labor laws and employee laws don't apply as strictly to freelance or contract workers. So he was able to lock down clients in the United States and work those so he could demand the pay rates of the United States. And that made a huge difference for him because the cost of living in his area is significantly lower than areas that he would typically make this much money. And now he can do that plus keep his day job while working clients on the side. And there are many more stories like this, like Conrad. He was actually a full-time consultant. So he's more of what most people think of as a typical freelancer. They work in a consulting firm, they realize how much these consulting firms are charging, and then they decide, I'm going to go off and do my own thing because I have these skills. But it's still difficult to go from, I know how to do my part of a project, to understanding how to secure clients and how to get the right paperwork in place and the correct documents signed, and hold your clients accountable for invoices and things like that. There's a lot that goes into it. So I don't want anyone to think that you're just going to listen to a presentation today, secure your first client on Monday, and then you're going to be off to the races with, people depositing checks into your account by Friday. There is a lot that goes into it. You are going to have a lot to learn because now you are a Salesforce professional who operates their own business. So keep that in mind. And I would just advise, don't rush into this. Take baby steps, work on getting your first client, work on your branding, and then move forward. And we can talk about that. All right. So I know I'm skipping over Eddie, but he pretty much just locked it down. He slow rolled it, and he now has, 5 clients. When he started our program, I believe he had 1 client that was like a friend, and now he's up to 5 clients, basically just using a repeatable process. And we'll talk about that. So now let's talk about what's stopping you. So here's what I know about presenting. The fact that I just put a lot of words on the screen. Currently, anyone who's paying attention is reading over everything on the screen instead of actually listening to what I'm saying. So I'm going to allow that to happen for a few seconds. So just take a moment to read through this, and then I will go through it with you. All right, perfect. So hopefully you had a second to glance over some of these obstacles. And the reason I know this is what's stopping you is because a lot of this is what was stopping me. And based on the people I've talked to who are Salesforce professionals, this is what is stopping them. And these are the things they come up with. You don't have stable income, right? Because you've talked to other people from different industries or different fields of work, and they tell you how with freelance consulting, it's hard to find stable income. And then it's easy to come up with a good answer for that. It's like, well, yeah, because you work a project, and then when the project's over, you have to go find the next project. And during that time where you're trying to find the next project, you don't have income. And that's really scary. So I don't think I can do this. Well, fortunate for all of you, that's not how it works. You should never be in a position where you have 0 projects. Now, I will tell you that your income does vary. So for instance, early on when I was freelancing, my income did vary. There were some years where I would make, maybe $110,000, and other years where I would make maybe $130,000 or $40,000. And what I did was I focused on keeping my personal expenses at the lower end of what I thought I would make. And then when I had a rough year, and a rough year was still great, I still made plenty of money and was able to enjoy a very for me, a very lavish lifestyle. And when I made great money, that just meant either I got to spend more or I got to save more for the future. So there are ways to negotiate around that. But another thing you do here is, for income stability, there are what are called managed services agreements. And I talk about this a ton inside the program. And you want to get these managed services agreements locked in, because what that allows you to do is put together 6-month or 1-year contracts with your clients. And I talk a lot about doing smaller projects up front. So if you have a client who doesn't know you and they just want to do a smaller project, do the smaller project. Don't try to buffer the hours up and get a 100-hour project out of it. Do a quick 30-hour project, and then identify a lot of things they still need or things that you would advise they do, and build that into secondary projects where you can do a support agreement, or what's often called a managed services agreement, where you can lock them in for 6 months to a year. And what that does for you, this isn't 40 hours a week for 6 months. This is probably 10 hours a week for 6 months. So now you've got 40 hours a month, 10 hours a week. You do that with 2 or 3 clients, and now you have 20 to 30 hours a week for the next 6 to 12 months. And all you have to do is keep those managed services agreements rolling, and you're never going to have months where you have no income. You might lose one of your 3 or 4 clients and then need to pick another one up, but you're never going to have months where you literally have no income. So can it be volatile? Yes, absolutely it can. But what you'll find is, if you do good work for clients and you enjoy working with them, you will find that these clients will continue to renew your contracts, and they will work with you for years and years, and you will make far more than you ever did working for an employer. So the next thing is, isn't it hard to find clients consistently? So we just talked over that. So it kind of goes hand in hand with stable income. When you have consistent clients, you have stable income. And no, the more work that you do and the more clients you have up front, it is a grind. Up front, you do have to find your first 2 or 3 clients, and that can be difficult. But once you've found the first 2 or 3, you can get testimonials, you can get letters of recommendation, and you have references for your work. So it becomes much easier for people to do research, find out that you do great work, and decide to come work with you. People also wonder, how do I know what rates to charge? They have no idea how much they should be charging. Now, this can be difficult, and there's not an easy answer for this, but what I'll say is consulting firms typically charge anywhere from $150 to $250 an hour. And if you are a freelance consultant, you can typically come under those rates and charge even, a lower number, say, for an absolute beginner, maybe $50 to $70 an hour, which, keep in mind, $50 an hour, 40 hours a week is $100,000 a year. If you go on the higher end of that, $70 an hour for 40 hours a week, that's $140,000 a year. So even at the very low end beginner freelance range, you can make that much. Now, typically people in, my advanced program who have more skills, they are charging anywhere from about $120 to $150 an hour. And if you do the quick math there, that's anywhere from $240,000 to $300,000 a year, charging 40 hours a week. So just keep that in mind, that the more skill you have, and if you have skills with like CPQ or Marketing Cloud or Pardot or Field Service Lightning and some of these other specialty skills, obviously you can charge more for clients who need help in those areas. So then a lot of people struggle with, do I need to start a real company? This one got me because I had never had a company before, right? I'd always worked for an employer. And this one stopped me early on in my career. And then I found out that, especially for anyone in the United States, it's very easy to start an LLC. But honestly, what I found by working with members is that it's really not that difficult to start an LLC in the United States, no matter where you live. And a lot of people kind of go, wait, what? How do I start an LLC? Which, by the way, is a limited liability corporation. It's basically the most fundamental version of a company that you can start in the United States. And we had people in our program who start an LLC in the United States, no matter where they live. And it's totally legal. And there are states like Nevada and South Dakota that make it fairly easy for you. And you can start your own business in the United States. Now, here's the interesting part. You actually don't need a company at all. You can work as a 1099 contractor and get paid at the get your tax forms at the end of the year and pay your taxes. And you don't actually have to have a company, but it makes a lot of people feel more comfortable because there is a limited liability when you own a company. If you happen to get sued or something really bad happens, your company sort of shields you from that. But I'll tell you, I've never had anyone bring up a legal dispute in any of the work that I've done. I know a lot of freelancers and I've never heard of that happening, but I do know it happens to consulting firms. And the reason it happens to consulting firms is because they do very high price projects for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single project. Some are even up to, $1 million for a single project. And they do really bad work and they put really bad resources on the project. And then they end up with a really bad end result. And it makes companies really mad because they just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yeah, it's worth taking you to court for. But typically in the independent consulting space, you're not really going to hear about that. They'll just fire you if they really hate what you've done, and you'll go find another client. But of course, you're going to do great work because you're going to be cognizant, you're going to use best practices, and you're going to be very communicative to make sure you do great work so that people give you great references. Another thing people struggle with is I can't possibly know everything. So what if I get stuck on a project? Like I'm halfway through the project and I realize I don't know what I'm doing and I get myself backed into a corner that I can't get out of. And I'll tell you that this has happened to me plenty of times. But if you immerse yourself and you actually engage in the Salesforce Ohana, it's a real thing. And if you get into these Salesforce Slack groups and Facebook groups and immerse yourself in the Ohana on LinkedIn, and there's so many different places. And if you've been in here at all, you'll know that there are people just like the people on this call and just like myself that we have no issue helping other people. If you make a post in one of these groups, there's so many people that rally around you. And the truth is you're going to have challenges where you're not sure what to do. It happens for independent consultants. It happens for consultants at firms. It happens for everyone. And it's eventually going to happen to you. And you have to lean into these challenges and learn and spend time understanding how to get around some of these obstacles. And it's okay. And clients know that it's okay as well. You just have to communicate and let them know, hey, this is really, something I haven't seen before. There were some nuances or scenarios here that I didn't quite expect. I'm not going to charge you for the time that I have to go research this. I just want you to know that. And I will figure this out and I will get it fixed and working. And the great news is because you're an actual valuable consultant, you're doing all of your work in a sandbox and you're making sure that it's done right and tested prior to going to production. So it's not going to be a fire. It's just going to be a delay in the project while you work with the Ohana to figure out how to solve for some of these problems. The other question you get is, well, I don't want to quit my day job because I need insurance and I need healthcare and I need my 401k plans and retirement benefits and all these things. So number one, you don't have to quit your day job. You can do this on the side. It's not a problem at all. Just make sure it doesn't interfere with your day job. And if you do decide to quit your day job, you can absolutely do that because you can get healthcare and you can, by the way, you can start your own 401ks. You don't have to have a company to give you a retirement plan. You can start retirement plans on your own. So you can do all of these things yourself. And there's no reason to need an employer for that. Employers just make you feel comfortable because all you have to do is sign up and select the plan you want and you're good to go. And they sort of streamline it for you. But when you're talking about, doubling your income and working half the hours you currently work, I think it's worth overcoming some of those limiting beliefs and doing a little research on how do I get healthcare on my own? How do I start my own 401k plan? How do I open a Roth IRA to start my own retirement savings? And you can do all of these things yourself, and you don't need an employer to handcuff you to the table for some of these things that, you know, are not that hard to do yourself. And then how do I even start and finish a project? This is a big one. I don't think this is a question I get often, but it's a question I should get more often. And it's people think they can just hop right in, start a project, take it to completion, train the end users and walk away. It's not that simple. You do have to understand how to guide your clients. And it's very important because as a consultant, your client should never be telling you what to do. You should never go to your client and say, hey, what do you want me to do next? You should always be guiding your client and leading them. They're paying you great money because they can rely on you to always keep yourself busy and stay independent, and then come to them when you need assistance and keep them updated. So you should always be guiding your client. So it's very important to understand how to take projects from start to finish. All right. So now let's take a look at some of the resources that are available. So as I mentioned, there are some limited resources in the freelance space. Now I know Salesforce Spin recently released a book in the space. And by the way, I don't mind mentioning my quote unquote competitors because I really am in this to just help people be aware of what's available. And if you decide to just use me for all of my free stuff, I love it. Go do your thing. If you decide to pay me a dime for anything, that's awesome. But if you decide you'd rather learn from someone like Salesforce Spin, by all means, go do that as well. I think it's great to just see people taking control of their careers, no matter how you decide to do that. Just don't get complacent, continue to move forward. So, of course, I do have my own YouTube channel. You can find that at youtube.com/Salesforce for everyone. And I do have a playlist on Salesforce Freelancing. So I put all of my freelance information into this playlist. And you can hop in there and watch those videos 100% for free to see what you can do. We give away a lot of great content in there to help you with next steps. If you comment on the videos and ask questions, I always respond. So feel free to do that. And then the next question is, well, what if I want a guided approach? So if you think you want a guided approach, I do have a full program for this, and I call it the Freelance Guide: The Secrets to Successful Projects and Long-Term Clients. So I've got a few of the people who have endorsed this. So a lot of you are likely familiar with Focus on Force and Salesforce Spin. So they are both endorsers of Talent Stacker and the programs that we have and the free 5-day challenge and things like that. And then, of course, Force Anywhere, Choose FI, and Side Hustle Nation, to name a few. So these are just some of the bigger names that you guys are probably aware of. So just to lend some credibility to say, we're not necessarily new to this. We've been doing this and we've had really great results. So other people are aware of that too, and they don't mind letting you know. So you can find, I've written a few articles for Salesforce Spin on some of these topics. You can find information on any of these places. I know Focus on Force wrote a blog for us specifically about freelancing and how great the program is. So feel free to do your research and check those out before you ever think about giving us a penny. Do your research. All right, so let me see what is next. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn or email me at bradley@talentstacker.com, and I'm happy to help you out there. Another thing I want to point out is some of you may be listening right now and going, okay, Brad, leverage the skills I already have. But what if I don't feel like I have skills yet? What if I don't think I am a Salesforce professional who can handle some of the things you're talking about? You just talked me through a laundry list of the obstacles that you have to overcome. But what if I just need to continue to develop my skills? So what I would recommend is I'll come through this pretty quickly because this is not the topic of today's event, and I want to stick to that and give you guys questions. But we do have a free 5-day challenge. You can find that at talentstacker.com/Salesforce. And what we do is we spend about 30 to 60 minutes a day. It's totally flexible. So if you want to sign up today and then get started next week, you can do that. Or if you want to just sign up next week, you can do that. So it's totally up to you. And what we also allow you to do is if you start day one and you're like, hey, I've got some extra time today, I want to knock this out, you can continue forward and actually go through the entire set of 5 days today if you want to. So it's totally up to you. It'll help you get started on your first certification. make major improvements to your branding, and better understand how to get real world experience to get some real good stuff on your resume. So this is more for people who are new to the Salesforce space and they're saying, you know what, I want to be a freelancer one day, but I got to get some skills under my belt. What we do is we take you through some guided emails, videos, and workbooks. And we spend a lot of time developing this because the free content that we create is very meaningful to a lot of people. So we try to make sure that it's amazing for you guys. If you are interested, we do have a development program that will help you to actually land your first job. I know some of the people here, I noticed some names that are already in this program or they've already landed their first job. So that's awesome that some of you guys are here. We do facilitated study groups, targeted branding, interview prep. We guarantee you real world experience through internal projects that we facilitate for you. We help you with job searching and how to apply. And then just to point out, you do not need a college degree. You do not need a tech background. We will overcome all of that for you. And if you want to hop on the wait list there is a wait list. It's first come, first serve. If you get on the wait list, you don't have to buy anything. We'll just send you information. And the link is right here. Same thing as before. The 5-day challenge is talentstacker.com/Salesforce. If you want to hop on the wait list, just add a /CDP and you can hop in there. Again, no obligation to purchase anything. We'll just send you some info. And once you're on the wait list, that sort of guarantees your spot in line. And the results of the program, I'll jog through these quickly. So we're having, right now we have 84% of our members land Salesforce jobs in less than 6 months. 47% of our members land jobs in under 100 days. In the first quarter of this year, so January through March, we had over $2 million in jobs landed through the program. And the average income for our members in the US, Canada, and Australia. So make sure to point, I'm not trying to trick anyone. So United States, Canada, and Australia specifically, these are the highest paying markets right now in the Salesforce space. So those markets are averaging $65,000 per job that is landed. So again, you can hop on the wait list right there. And then for any other information, if you want to find us anywhere else, again, here's the link to the 5-day challenge, my LinkedIn. If you want to find us on Facebook, where there's a free Facebook group that we facilitate called Salesforce for Everyone. And the same thing on YouTube. You can find us under the YouTube channel, Salesforce for Everyone. And that wraps it up from my end. So I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
That was wonderful, Bradley, and what you shared is very informative, and it cleared a lot of questions. We already have so many questions that were asked by the attendees, and I would like to give a shout out to your YouTube channel, Salesforce for Everyone. It really is, so it's for everyone, and I follow the content most of the times. You have a wealth of information in there, and if somebody is trying to join the Salesforce community, like they want to start their careers, Brad has covered all the tips and all the ways that you can get engaged, all the ways that you can start your career, and there's much more. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel and also follow these other links. So we have a lot of questions. So before we hop on to the questions, Akhilesh wanted to give a short intro to the group. I will let Akhilesh just take a few minutes here.
Perfect.
Thank you, JB, and thanks, Brad, for such an insightful presentation. It was super helpful. So to everyone, I just wanted to share some quick information. I have two forces which I quickly run. One of them, it's called SheForce WIT and HeartForce Global. So SheForce WIT, it's a global WIT organization wherein we have 2,500 plus women from 50 plus geographies. And we have HeartForce Global, which is a student-focused or a Salesforce learners community. So we do a lot of activities around education sharing sessions, mentoring coaching sessions, and in terms of helping people to get empowered. So I would request, in case if anyone is new to our community or is a first timer to the event, I'll be sharing the information in the chat section. Please utilize that. And in case if you think you need some help, we are there to help you out. Thank you so much, JB. Over to you.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Now let's move on to the questions. I know there are a lot of questions, and we'll try to cover as many as possible during this session. The first question, Ravi and Shilpa, they both have a similar kind of question. And I also see, I hear this question from many people asked to me. So if they are located in one country and they want to, they have an opportunity to work in another country, what are the terms that come into place? Can anybody work anywhere in the world, or is there something that we need to consider?
Yeah, so as long as you are interested in being a contractor or a consulted resource, so this means you're not a full-time employee, you're not going to get healthcare and retirement benefits, those kind of things, you can work anywhere in the world. So there may be some countries that have some specific needs, but specifically in the United States, in Canada, I know that there are very little restrictions as far as who can work where. Now, I'll tell you that there are some red flags that come up. So the moment that a business owner says, hey, we need to pay you, right? So if you go through our program, we teach you how to invoice, we teach you how to do payment terms and all these kind of things. And you can Google it to death, or you can just ask me. If you ask me enough, I'll talk to you about this stuff. But and we do a lot of free content on this as well, but you're going to have payment terms in place. And what that means is that helps your client understand when they should expect to pay you. And sort of, it's like, is it when we go live? Is it when we start the project? Is it when we sign off and say all of your solution documents look good? Like, when do we pay you? And you get that sort of stuff in place. Well, they need to know how to pay you, right? It's like, well, okay, what they're used to doing is saying, give me your bank account number and your routing information, and I will send you the money. Okay, so this is going to be the first hiccup if you're a non-national, or if you're not a US citizen or a Canadian citizen or wherever you're trying to work. You're going to go, oh, I have a bank account, but it's not a US bank account. So now we have a problem, right? And you're going to throw up a lot of red flags if you say, just send it over via PayPal, or just Venmo it to me, or whatever else, because that doesn't typically mesh well with an accounting or finance department at a company. So how do we overcome this? So if you are not, let's just use the US as an example. If you're not a US citizen, what you're going to need to do is set up an LLC in the United States. That needs to be your first step. And the reason you want to do that, and just trust me on this. This is, and you can message me, or you can post and mention me on LinkedIn or something like that, whatever you want to do. And you can Google this and sort of confirm it, but it's been done quite a few times. This isn't groundbreaking. It's just new information probably for most of you. So when you're in the space working with people, what you do is you set up an LLC in the United States. So like I said, Nevada and South Dakota are pretty, sort of lenient on the sort of paperwork you need to fill out, but you don't have to be a US citizen to open an LLC in the United States. So the cool thing is, once you have an LLC, you can get a social security number for that company. And that's called an EIN number. So it gets a little technical, but bear with me here, and you can watch the recording later. So it's basically a social security number for your business. It's called an EIN number. And you can get that totally free at the US federal government website, and they'll issue you that. It takes about 10 minutes to get that EIN number. Now, the hard part is getting the LLC set up. Sometimes it does take a few months for that to be approved and for you to get your LLC in place. And then from there, you get the EIN number. And once you have an EIN number, you legally have a business identification number for a company based in the United States. And you can now open a US bank account using that business name and that business identification number. Totally legal. You're not walking in any sort of gray areas here. So you can open that up. And now guess what? So that's the hard part up front. You do it one time and it's over, right? So you go through this one time, you never have to do it again. And what that allows you to do is now you have a US bank account with an account number and a routing number. And so when that client says, hey, we would like to pay you, how can we pay you? And you say, oh, I have an account over at Chase Bank. Here's my account number and my routing number. You can send that over for the deposit right here. And now you've avoided that red flag completely of people just going, oh, that's weird. I don't know about PayPal or whatever. And that's effectively how you do it. But I know that's a little detailed, and that's a good first question. That's one of the sort of next level questions that we do get. So that does take some time. That's probably one of the hardest parts of working for US, Canadian, Australian companies when you're not a national of that or a citizen of that country. And so those are some of the things you'll have to overcome, but I can pretty well guarantee you that's going to be probably the most complicated thing that you're ever going to have to do in getting your business in place for freelancing.
That's a great point, Brad. So it doesn't matter where you are in, but you can look for opportunities somewhere else in the world as well. That's a great thing.
Yeah, you put it much more concisely than I did.
You are the expert. So the next question is, if at all we are in the same country, or we are a newbie and wanted to get started with the freelancing, what is the best approach? Is it like simply looking on the website and applying for the job, or do we need to make sure that we have everything set up prior to that as well? Yeah,
so a lot of people struggle with this because they spend a lot of time focusing on things that don't matter, and these things get in their way, and then they give up because they get burnt out, and I want to start a freelance company, and then they start this weekend, but they spend 3 hours trying to figure out their company name. And it's like, stop wasting your time on what your company name is going to be. Stop wasting your time trying to put together websites and all this other stuff, because while that stuff is meaningful and you do need to figure it out, you also have to prioritize. And a lot of people get bogged down with, okay, I'll get a website started this weekend. Okay, maybe next weekend, maybe next month. And then they never get started freelancing because they don't have a website. You will find that Honest IT, technically my consulting website, or my consulting company, never had a website. It still doesn't have a website because you don't necessarily need it. Now, I would advise anyone who's serious about freelancing to probably get a website, but it doesn't need to be the first thing you're doing, and it's probably not going to be the third thing you're doing. It comes later. So don't worry about your company name right away. Don't worry about getting a website up right away. Focus on your LinkedIn profile and building that up and getting your branding right there, making sure people know that you are someone who knows how to do Salesforce related work, and that you are open to accepting clients for freelancing work. And that's what you need to have in place. And that sort of takes the place of your website for a little while, and you can sort of work under your own name. And then once you get a couple of clients in place, you might go, okay, I'm ready to really structure this because I see it as a clear path forward, and I'm going to focus on this and get some of the foundation set up. Now, I think part of your question was, how do I go about getting some of these first clients? Do I just go apply for jobs, or do I go on Upwork? And so what I'll say is, tools like Fiverr and Upwork, they're not that great. And the reason they're not that great is because you all already know about them, right? Like when I say Upwork, you guys, everyone here is probably going, all right, yeah, I know what Upwork is. I know how to use Upwork. That's the problem. Everyone knows about Upwork. Over the whole, the entire world knows about Upwork. And so it means that everyone's already there, from people who are just willing to go out and lie about what they're capable of and tell you that they're 10X certified and they're an expert consultant and they'll do the project for $10 an hour. And all those people are out there. And what it's done is it's burnt the clients. So there are clients on Upwork who want to work with great people, but they've been burned so many times by poor quality work or people who get started and then they leave. And so what you're going to do is you're going to walk into an area where people are a little apprehensive, and they need you to really prove yourself to them. And then they see people over here that do work for $10 an hour, but the quality of the $10 an hour work is horrible. So they expect you to do it for $10 an hour, but they don't understand how bad the quality of that work is. So you end up in this really chaotic, messed up place, and you need to come from a more professional stance. So what I typically do, if you're an absolute beginner, say you've got a certification and no experience, or you've got maybe a few months of experience and one certification or something like that. So you're pretty well on the sort of the beginning junior level rung. What you can do, and I've done this multiple times, is do volunteer projects on platforms like Volunteer Match, or you might have a network in your LinkedIn network or, something like that works for a company. And you say, hey, I could do some work for you on the side, or, hey, I can come help out at your company and do maybe some, free consulting at your consulting firm. And I know a lot of you guys are probably going, yeah, Brad, but we don't want to know how to do free work. We want to know how to get paid as a freelancer. And so what you do is you're developing a client base. And a lot of people, it's not just freelancers, it's pretty much every startup business in the world struggles with this. And it's the fact that when you put money first, when you're only going after money, you're going to struggle as a business owner when you only think about the money you're going to make. What you need to think about is serving your customers to an absolute tremendous level, they need to, so what you can do is imagine a volunteer project where somebody needs some help and you come in and say, I'll do it completely for free. Well, they expect not very good work, right? Well, now you come in and you do an absolutely amazing job like a professional consultant would do. And you only do, say, 20 hours of work for them. So maybe it's 5 hours a week for 4 weeks. You do 20 hours of work. And at the end of that engagement, you say, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I have a passion for what your company's doing. I love what you're doing, but I do have paying clients that I have to focus on. But I loved working with you and I would love to continue working with you. And I can give you my nonprofit rate since you are a nonprofit, and that's $50 an hour. So I would love to continue working with you. If not, I totally get it. But I would love to do that. So what you'll typically see happen is they'll say, maybe not right. Like if you did a really good job, they might go $50 an hour. I get it. I'll take it. If they're a little more apprehensive or they don't have a budget, they might go, well, maybe I'll hold off until later. Maybe we can find another volunteer to do some of this work. And then they go deal with a couple of volunteers. And those volunteers, once again, do what volunteers do. They come in and they don't understand the business, or they don't have the qualifications they said they had, or they get tired of doing the project halfway through it and they just quit because they're not getting paid anyway. And guess what? Once they deal with that person a couple of times, they go, you know what? $50 an hour is an absolute bargain compared to dealing with the turnover and teaching people and them not wanting to actually help us. They just want to get a line on their resume and leave. So when you can do that, you can convert those into clients. And guess what? Those clients will preach your name from the top of the mountain for the rest of your career. They will do testimonial videos for you. They will write you letters of recommendation. And all you need are 2 or 3 good testimonials, and you are going to be able to ramp up very quickly. That's it. People need a way to know that you're credible. And by having testimonials and letters of recommendation and reference letters, that is what gives you credibility. It makes it very easy for people to say yes to you in the future when you're coming out and saying, I want to make $50 or $75 or $100 an hour. You have testimonials that say you are credible and you do great work, and it speaks for itself.
I love that approach, Brad. So just go out and create that credibility, and then the work comes by itself. I have another question from MK. Freelancer versus independent contractor. I think you covered it briefly in your session.
I can talk to that for a second. So I will say, be careful with the word contractor in that. So if you start applying for roles that are contractor roles, like literally they say contractor, a lot of times those are full-time positions that you're taking on for a limited time frame. So it might be you're going to contract for 40 hours a week for the next 3 months. Now that's very different from freelancing. It's similar, but it's different because when you're a contractor, you still typically work a 40-hour work week for one client, and that can introduce that income instability that we talked about earlier, where if you're doing 40 hours a week for one client, that doesn't give you much flexibility to work for other people. And then when that contract ends, you do have to go grab another contract to line up. So contracts are typically 40 hours a week, where consultants typically work 3 or 4 clients at a time. And that's totally normal. Like a consulting firm, if you work at a consulting firm and you work on a project, typically that consulting firm has you on 3 or 4 projects at a time. And it's very normal for you to work a variety of different clients all at one time. So I do have a YouTube video on contracting versus consulting. So just keep that in mind, that don't go out looking for jobs that say contractor. That's going to get you locked into 40-hour a week stuff. You might actually reach out to some of those people and say, hey, I can't do 40 hours a week. I can do 20 hours a week, something like that. But typically you want to avoid those contract roles because they do take away from your flexibility.
Okay. And what would be the typical payment terms?
Payment terms? Yeah, those come in a couple of different varieties. A lot of people do 50-50, which is you pay me 50% before I get started. Now, for beginners, that can sound insane. And they're like, how could I possibly ask for 50% upfront? It's very normal in the industry to ask for 50% upfront. Now, you are under contract to complete the work. You'll have a contract in place at that point. So you are legally obligated to do the work. So you're not just going to get paid and then walk away if you think like you're going to get slick or something like that. You are fully obligated to get the work done. And if you just walk away, you're going to, number one, you'll never freelance again because you just ruined your reputation. And number two, they could take you to court and demand their money back. So just don't play that game. So anyway, very typical, 50% upfront and then 50% right before go live. So they've tested in the sandbox. They feel very confident that the work has been done properly. And then before you release the work to production, they pay the last payment. And then you release it to production because that's what actually brings it to life for the company. And then you might support it for 5 or 10 days if they have any little issues that come up. But that's pretty normal. You can also do what I call milestone payments. And you might get something like 20% upfront. And then maybe once you build out a solution document, they'll pay you 20% again before you start building in a sandbox. And then before you go live, they'll pay you another 20%. And then they'll pay you 20% once it's complete. And then you're moving into sort of the support phase. So there's a few different ways you can do it. And it's really up to you and your client how you structure that. But the two versions I just described, the 50-50 and the milestone payments, are what's pretty standard to the industry as far as payment terms go.
Okay, that's a great answer, Brad. So the next question is about pricing. So we often face the challenge of how to price it correctly so that we have the chance of getting the project, and also we have the opportunity of earning as well, not losing too much, not discounting too much. So for our given skill set, how do we determine and how do we sometimes negotiate to make it work for both of
what I'll say is first of all, it's sort of a rule of thumb that's sort of hard to get past. First of all, don't involve your own personal financial situation in how much you're trying to charge. And so some people might be like, okay, what does that mean? So if you just lost your job or your spouse just lost their job and money's tight for you and you're not sure how you're going to pay your mortgage, next month or a couple of months from now, or you're not sure how you're going to pay your rent or your car payment, here's something to keep in mind. Your client doesn't care. It's not their problem, the financial situation that you're in, and you need to separate business from personal in the financial aspect. So I see a lot of small companies struggle with this, and it's like, I make $60,000 a year. I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to make $80,000 a year. And then all they do is work backwards and say, so in order to make $80,000 a year, I'm going to charge this rate, and then I'll make that much. No one cares how much you need to make. All they care about is how much they're willing to pay you for the work that needs to be done. So first things first, forget about your financial situation when you're thinking about how much you're going to charge a client. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, and it's a mental hurdle you have to get past. I say this to people who are starting their first jobs. And it looks like, let me see. Switch over to this Did my camera cut out? I think it did on my end.
Yeah, we lost your video.
Okay, let me see all right, I'll switch over to this camera for a second. Okay, so another thing I'll point out is you want to think about the trajectory of your career. And typically the beginning of your career is where you're going to make the least amount of money for the entirety of when you're going to work. And this is important to keep in mind because a lot of people want to charge, say, $100 an hour coming out of the gates because they want to make big money and not miss out today. But the truth is, even just working, going back to what I mentioned before, even if you charged your first client $20 an hour or $30 an hour or $40 an hour, it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things, because what you're really working for is to increase your skills, increase your credibility, to get those testimonials and letters of recommendations. And once you build those up, no one will ever question your price again. You can charge $80, $100, $120 an hour. It doesn't matter, because you are a credible, independent consultant in the Salesforce space. And now you've broken down those barriers. So now your LinkedIn profile has a background on the top that has a few thumbnails of testimonial videos that clients have done for you. You come down to your title and it says expert Salesforce consultant, currently accepting new clients. You come down to your about section. It tells stories about the amazing work that you've done in the companies that you've worked for. Come down to your featured section. It's a list of letters of recommendation and testimonial videos that your clients have done for you. And now you've got all the same information sitting on a website. So what happens is when you reach out to a company on LinkedIn or any other way, and you say, hey, I'm interested in working with you as a consultant, they click on your LinkedIn profile link, they come look at you. Guess what? It is just an absolute overwhelming amount of support for the work that you do and how great you are. And you just have an amazing name for yourself. So what I'll say is, I know that doesn't quite answer the question, but don't worry so much about what you're going to charge on day one, because the money will come. If you do great work and people are happy with the work that you do for them, you are going to get paid great money. And it's much easier to demand those rates of, $100+ an hour when you know you're credible and you're no longer an imposter and you know that people value the work that you do. Then you can really take control of it and take it to the next level.
I love that answer, Bradley. And you also highlighted how important it is to create our brand and also make our LinkedIn profile or our profile more visible. So that plays an important role in getting the next job or any opportunity. And this next question, we are going back to the first one that we discussed. So being in one country, we can work for any opportunity in any other country. So if you haven't created an LLC and has no experience and no accounts are set up, so in that case, is it better to select W2 over C2C, or even if we have that set up, when to choose what?
Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult. Now, if you want to be like W2 is obviously that's a full-time position, right? And you're taking on a full-time role with a company. It's a different ballpark then, right? I mean, the people who are interested in freelancing are interested in it for a couple of different reasons. One of it is lifestyle flexibility. They want to be a digital nomad, or they want to work less than 40 hours a week, things like that. They also get into it because they know that you can make more money freelancing because you're cutting out the consulting firm as the middleman, and you can take every ounce of that payment for yourself, as well as the responsibility. Keep that in mind. It's not all, rainbows and butterflies. You do take on the responsibility and the marketing and the sales and everything else. So I definitely don't want to paint a picture again that this is some really simple, happy-go-lucky, simple thing to do and you can just go make incredible amounts of money. You are operating a company. But yeah, I would say if you're interested in freelance, you're probably not interested in W2 work unless you're using W2 work specifically to build a foundation and maybe polish your skills a little bit, get a little more credibility for yourself and sort of prove to yourself that you're capable of doing Salesforce work. Then absolutely keep your day job or get a day job and focus on that. But I will say, even if you talk about the approach we talked about a moment ago with volunteering your way into credibility, you don't need to have an LLC. You don't need to have anything at all. And I will say a lot of the nonprofits that you convert, once you get that volunteer work under your belt and they know who you are and they know you do good work and you're communicative and responsible, a lot of times they are willing to pay you via PayPal or Venmo or however you need to be paid. And they're not as specific on those things because they already know you do good work and you're not trying to like scam them out of money because you did work for them for free. So I would advise, if you're still on the fence about what you want to do, and you think for sure I want to work with US based clients or whatever other country, look into trying to get a good volunteer project and prove yourself. You're going to prove yourself to a client and to your own self that you're capable of this, and then take it from there. And you may not even need an LLC if you develop a network of converting volunteer opportunities into paid opportunities.
Thank you, Brad. And there is one other discussion that's about the tax implications. So if I set up a company in US, South Dakota, or you mentioned a couple of places, so would we be obligated to pay the taxes in US and in the other country? How will it work?
Okay. So somebody else is going to have to answer that question because there's no way I can give you tax advice. My assumption would be that you would pay taxes based on the country that you're a citizen of. So you would probably pay taxes on the income in your local country. But don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. That's definitely worth some research. So all I know is the way it works in the US, and I know that I would pay my US taxes no matter where I earn income. If I'm a citizen of the United States and I live in the United States and I work somewhere else, the US wants to tax my money. So I'm not sure how that works in other countries.
Okay. And I think we covered almost all of the questions, and we are over time. On Brad, if you have a few more
Sure.
minutes.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Brad. So all the attendees are now able to unmute yourself. So feel free to unmute and ask the question directly to Brad.
So I would, just keep this side. I would like to answer, Jyotsa, your last question about the taxation. If I'm working from India and working for a US corporation as a freelancer, as a consultant, and I'm getting money directly into my Indian account, then I have to pay only for Indian taxes. And if I have to register LLC and do the transaction through LLC to my Indian account, then I have to bear taxes at both the sites. Firstly at the US, and then at India as well. So
Okay.
that is like I have like some of my friends are doing the same. So that's why I am pretty confident about this question.
Yeah. Thank you very much for clarification.
Hi, Brett. Sumit here. I have a question that many companies have clause that before you start doing any freelancing, inform us. It's like to inform them and then start freelancing. But that rather sounds like don't do the freelancing. Or
yeah. So what? I definitely know what you're talking about. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. So what you're referring to is typically like a non-compete agreement that you might have with your employer. Now, the non-compete agreements are pretty typical if you work for a Salesforce consulting firm already, because there is a little issue there, right? Because you have access to their database. You could see all the companies that use Salesforce that they've already worked with or that they've tried to work with. And you could potentially poach clients from your own company. And that's why you have a non-compete agreement. So if you work for a consulting firm, you may see some of these non-compete agreements in place. Definitely an area to be careful about. That there's a lot of gray area there as far as, I know a lot of consultants who do consulting on the side. No one ever asks, but that doesn't mean you should do it. And then of course, from an ethical and moral perspective, my opinion would be that, of course, never attempt to poach a client from your consulting firm. That's clearly an issue there. But if you're finding people who come to you on LinkedIn or something like that, and they see that you do good work and they want to work with you, I personally would entertain that conversation. And I'm not necessarily going to raise the red flag to my employer and say like, hey, look, I got some work over here that somebody wants me to do. Let me tell you all about it. And that's up to you. And some people have really strong opinions on it. And they say, look, just because I work 40 hours a week for one person shouldn't give them control over what I do with my free time. Like that's absurd. They're not dictators over my life just because they give me a paycheck. Now, if it's interrupting the work you do for your employer, that's a problem. If you're not doing your 40 hours a week anymore because you're doing work on the side and you're letting that take over your life, then yeah, that's a problem. Or if you're poaching their clients, that's definitely a problem. So I would say it's a great question. If you work for specifically, this is going to be if you work for a Salesforce consulting firm, you might have a non-compete agreement in place like that. Otherwise, if you work for like a W-2 employer where, it's some manufacturing company and you're their Salesforce administrator or developer, the chances of them having a non-compete that says you're not allowed to do Salesforce work for anyone else is pretty unlikely. And I know that, some companies will have stricter rules than others, especially if you work for like a large enterprise company or if you work directly for Salesforce or Google or something like that. Some companies will have that, but just be aware of the non-compete agreements that are in place and what's there. But I know somebody commented here, hey, Nick, some companies explicitly disallow you to do freelance type work on the side. And that's definitely true. And I'm aware of where you work, Nick. And that's definitely true for you guys because you work for a large Salesforce consulting firm. So they certainly wouldn't allow that.
Hey, Brad, can you share an example of a nonprofit project? That would
Nonprofit project?
Yeah, that would be not too complex, but they see a very clear impact, right? This is, wow, I didn't know we could do that.
Yeah, for sure. The biggest issues that nonprofits see are they work with a lot of different tools. They typically have like marketing through MailChimp, and they take payments through PayPal or credit cards or whatever else. And they've got their contacts in the system, but they don't really know how much they've donated or how often they donate or who their big donors are. There's a lot of things like that. They might host a gala or some type of fundraising event, but they have no idea if hosting that event was worth their time or energy because they know they got some big donations while they were there, but they don't really know the actual amount. So what Salesforce does for really any company, but nonprofits specifically who are taking a lot of donations or fundraising, what it allows them to do is consolidate that into, the nonprofit edition of Salesforce gives them the ability to see these households where you could have a husband and wife or a spousal situation under one household. And then you could see all the donations coming from each individual from the family and how often they donate. You could run some pretty amazing reports on how much did they donate last year compared to how much they've donated this year. And if there's a negative difference there, then we might want to reach out to them and see what's going on. And if they would like to make a donation, but they forgot, you can look at which events you're doing for fundraising, which ones are working the best, if you're actually getting donors from these places or not. So you'll see a lot going around donations. And the cool thing is they typically have email lists and free tools like MailChimp, and you can integrate those with free third-party apps. Through the App Exchange, you can integrate MailChimp directly with Salesforce and pull all of those contacts directly into Salesforce and sync that. Totally free if they have MailChimp already. You can do things like implement e-signature if you have larger donations that need a sign off, or things like charitable giving forms. So you can generate, documents and e-signature. On top of that, I think I mentioned like PayPal. There are PayPal integrations and integrations with payment tools like Chargent that allow you to take credit card payments directly into Salesforce, and those create opportunity records automatically, or take PayPal payments and automatically sync those into Salesforce using tools like Zapier. So there is an array of what can be done, but effectively, just like with any business, you're trying to take the business processes, which can be pretty similar with nonprofits, and a lot of times they're taking donations or doing fundraising events, and you can sync all of those email lists and all of those donations and payments into one place where they can, go to their dashboard, click refresh, and see exactly how they're doing and how they're trending at different points.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate your detailed explanation. And I see a lot of great feedback coming in for your Salesforce career development program. And I do have a couple of questions related to that program. One is, so the 5-day challenge, is that only for admin certification or other certifications as well, like platform developer or any others? And I will also add the second question now itself. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the specific services that you have offered as part of your managed services contract?
Okay. So for the career development program, that's really, I would recommend that to anyone who's looking to be a Salesforce professional. Now, you will find that most people in the program, because we recommend it, start by focusing on the admin certification. And if you watch any of my content, I do recommend that even people who want to be career developers start with the admin certification, just to get a fundamental understanding of Salesforce, the platform, how companies use it, what the basic structure of the platform is, because the best developers understand the actual platform itself. The worst developers do things that could easily be done with the point and click side of things, and they do it in custom code because they don't understand the standard sort of declarative or clicks not code side of Salesforce. But they know how to code, so they build everything in custom code. And that can be really cumbersome and create technical debt for smaller companies that really needed simpler, more manageable solutions, but they ended up with a bunch of custom code on top of, an org that they can no longer maintain. So I would say it really is for everyone who's looking to get an edge. We don't necessarily, we focus on getting the admin certification, but this is not a certification focused program. This is a get a job program. So a lot of people focus on certifications, and that's great. And you can do that if you want to. But we focus on getting you one certification. If you want to work on another one, you can. And we do have content there for Platform App Builder and Platform Developer 1. But we are honed in on like, hey, once you have that admin certification, you don't necessarily need to focus all of your time on certifications anymore. We need to focus on LinkedIn branding, your personal branding, how to interview well, how to find the jobs that are a good fit for you, and how to stand out in things like interviews and things like that. So we are much more focused on getting you a job and not necessarily teaching you to be an all-star developer or an all-star administrator. There are some foundational things you need, like a certification to really show your value. But outside of that, we're much more focused on getting you a job. And that's why you'll see like the stats that I put in this presentation there. It wasn't super focused around, this is how many people have become certified through our program, or this is how many people got a high five for being a great Salesforce professional. It was, this is how many people have landed jobs. This is how much money people are making. Because I think most people come into Salesforce and they want to get certifications because they want to get a job and they want to get paid for these skills. But then I think they lose sight of that a little bit because they go, well, I got one certification, maybe I'll study and get another certification, and maybe I'll study and get another certification. And they lose sight of the real goal, which is not getting certifications, it's getting paid. But sometimes it's hard to understand how you turn those certifications into money. And that's really what we focus on, is getting you into a career. Now, the second thing you ask about, managed services agreements. So now flip the script back to freelancing. So we're back to freelancing. Managed services agreements. What you typically do with those is they have you on the hook for, say, 40 hours a month, and they can pretty much ask you for whatever they want. So if they want to do a project where they're going to implement Salesforce for a new department, or they might want to add some third-party apps, or they might just want you to clean some data or create new users and get, ownership moved from one person to another. Maybe they, just want things cleaned up on the back end so they don't have so many custom fields and validation rules and all that kind of stuff. So really those managed services agreements they just have you on retainer to do whatever they want you to do. And typically it helps them not have to hire a full-time Salesforce professional. So imagine you have a full-time Salesforce professional at work and they make $80,000 a year, but then after healthcare and other benefits and supplying computers and cell phones and internet coverage and all this, you'll probably pay them closer to $100,000 a year. Whereas if you have a consultant on the hook for 40 hours a month that can get all of the same work done as the full-time person, you're looking at, even at $100 an hour, you're still only looking at $4,000 a month, which would work out to, I guess, $48,000 a year. So you're getting that person for half the price who gets the same job done. And that's why you're basically an internal resource at a lower cost with much fewer hours expected from you each week. So just sort of look at it that way.
That totally makes sense, Brad. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, Jyotsna and Bradley. Manisha here. I have a question. And
Sure,
first,
go
I
ahead.
would like to thank both of you. You both are very responsive whenever I asked and each question to like you or Bradley, I got the answer right away. So my question is you always, we mentioned that we should get volunteer through a non-profit, but I started learning non-profit, but I feel it's totally different from the admin aspect. Like whatever I learned in admin, it's a different cloud. So I still don't feel confident to go look for a volunteer opportunity in a non-profit. So how much important it is to learn non-profit cloud, and it's a different cloud. It's really big. So how much I should learn to before I start looking for the opportunity? And one more thing, like in Feb, I tried looking on Catchafire for volunteer opportunity. And I was so overwhelmed. They were asking for profile. They were asking to show me the work. They were asking for GitHub. I didn't have all those things ready that time. I still have only my profile ready. I don't have any GitHub account. So how important it is to keep those things ready? before applying for a volunteer opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say that when you're applying for volunteer opportunities, first off, if you want your best odds of landing those volunteer roles, first off, be honest and be passionate about their mission. So nonprofits, typically the people who work for the nonprofits don't get paid as much as they would if they worked for a for-profit company. And the reason they don't get paid as much is because they are happy to get paid less because they are passionate about the mission of that nonprofit. So you have to also convince them that you are passionate about the mission of that nonprofit. So if you're applying for some nonprofit volunteer work, if you want a better chance of landing it, research what they do, what their mission is, and then come up with some stories related to your own personal experience that helps sort of showcase why you also are passionate about those particular, I guess the particular mission for that company. And it looks like my camera cut out again, but yeah, so that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is you need to be responsible. And what I mean by that is use a sandbox. You may not be at a position where you feel comfortable doing some of these projects or doing some of these requirements. And if you've been honest with the company up front, you say, hey, I've got a certification, but I lack real world experience, but that's why I'm willing to do this 100% for free for you. I'm going to work in a sandbox. I'm going to use best practices. I'm going to lean on my professional network to do the best solutions possible. And I will also always keep you involved with what I'm building. I can demo it to you. I can show you how it works to make sure that it works for your company. And that's the learning curve of anyone doing anything in life, whether it's riding a bicycle or being a Salesforce professional. You have to start somewhere and you have to get your practice in before you're ever going to be able to convince someone that you're really good at it. So I would say start by giving yourself a break and not feeling like you need to be significantly over prepared for these situations. On top of that, if somebody asks you for a GitHub account, I don't really know what they were trying to accomplish. Like, I don't have a GitHub account, but I've been freelancing for 6 years and a Salesforce, professional for over 11 years. Now I know a lot of developers have GitHub accounts, but sorry, I don't have one and I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish there. So what I would do is say, what is it you're looking for? What can I help you better understand? Because what they're trying to do is research you to make sure that you are a quality person. Even though it's a volunteer gig, they want to make sure you're quality. And with a proper LinkedIn profile, a proper resume, you will give them everything they need to see that you're credible. And so it's probably they were trying to knock down some barriers to more easily do research on you and see what you're up to. And so if you have some of these other profiles in place, that can really help to do that. Now, the other question you ask is about nonprofit cloud. And it is a separate cloud, but I'll say I've been around since there were two clouds. There was Sales Cloud and there was Service Cloud. And a new cloud comes out about every quarter, it seems like now. I hear about clouds and I'm just like, I'm blown away. I'm like, no, that's fake. And then it's like, no, they really did just do like 6 new clouds today. So what I would say is that it's still Salesforce. You are still looking at, when you go into the setup menu, what do you see? You see the object manager, you see validation rules, custom objects, custom fields, process builders, flows, workflow rules, Apex code. You see, guess what? You're still building on the Salesforce platform. It's just branded for nonprofits. So does that mean you shouldn't do your research and you should just say, well, I know everything? No, absolutely not. Like, you could go through Trailhead and look at some nonprofit stuff and maybe even start working your way towards a nonprofit certification. And you should definitely familiarize yourself with the nonprofit cloud. But I think what you're going to find is that with a little playing around in a sandbox and getting familiar with the settings for the nonprofit cloud and things like that, you're going to realize it's very, very similar. I would say it's probably 85% the same as any other Salesforce cloud. It's just that it's got some things layered on top, like the household accounts by default. It's automatically creating, if you create a new contact, it automatically creates a household for that contact. And some of that stuff can be confusing. But once you sort of wrap your head around it and just play around with it for a little while, I think you'll find that it's really not that different than a typical Sales Cloud instance.
That's a great point, Brad.
And thank you for explaining it so well, Brad. I have one more question. Actually, I had one interview and their first question was, how much experience you had in nonprofit. What should I tell them? Because like I don't have experience in nonprofit. How should I convince them? And I got response within 1 hour that they went ahead with another client. So I just want to like ask how to convince them. Like what should I tell them? Like I in my application I wrote everything. Okay, I am like.
Yeah, I get where you're headed there, and this is an obstacle for anybody, whether it's freelancing or looking for their first job or looking for any job. And again, we're coming back to your credibility, right? This is all about a client's ability to make sure you're credible before they give you an opportunity to log into their org, and they should. So what I'll say is, first of all, you are going, especially early in your career, you are going to get denied or told no more often than you're going to get told yes. So first, take a deep breath and accept that. It doesn't make you not qualified. It doesn't make you not good enough. It's just what happens when you're early in your career, and that's okay. So what you need to do is come out of those situations with as much feedback as you can get on actionable steps you can take to improve yourself. So I heard you say a couple of things. I'm sure they said a lot more, but I heard them say, what nonprofit experience do you have? And you're going, well, I don't have any. Well, the good news is as soon as you land your first volunteer gig and you do that 20-hour project, now you've got an answer for that. So my actionable tip would be, you got to do everything you can to get a volunteer gig. Now, how are you going to overcome the obstacle? Well, what if your answer could have been, actually, I have spent 70 hours in Trailhead on the nonprofit trails, making sure that I fully understand the nonprofit cloud and the functionality that makes it different from other Salesforce clouds. I would say I'm about 3 to 5 weeks from being nonprofit certified, which, there aren't a lot of people who are nonprofit certified in the Salesforce space because it's a very underserved community in the Salesforce ecosystem. I also researched your company and I see the mission you guys are on and the type of work that you're doing. And that is extremely meaningful to me in my life for this particular reason that's very personal to me that I want to share with you. And for all those reasons, I feel that maybe I'm not where I need to be today to serve you 100%, but I can personally guarantee you that I will do everything in my power to make sure that I build scalable solutions for your company, that I am on the same mission with you guys, and I'm here to stay. I will be loyal, even though I am a volunteer for you, and I'm ready to give everything I have to improving myself and leveraging Salesforce to improve your company. So if you could throw a pitch like that, now, even if you're not qualified or they don't see you as qualified, you have now become someone that they would like to work with simply because they want to work with you, not because you have all the skills they need, but they want to work with you because they believe in your ability to work for them.
Oh, thank you, Bradley. Yeah, and I like the way you said the answer, like what I should tell them. I really liked it. I am gonna make a note of it. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Bradley.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
That's a great answer, Bradley. So I agree 200% to that. And I would like to add something to the nonprofit. Manisha, you pointed out that everybody that you're applying for a nonprofit, you need to learn. It's all a new thing again. In my leisure time, I volunteer for a nonprofit educational institute. So they are not using NPSP, they're not using EDA. So not every nonprofit uses NPSP. So they just are using Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, and a lot of Salesforce stuff, but they're not using NPSP. There may be some nonprofits that you can find out. And if it requires you to learn NPSP, give yourself a pat that you have a learning opportunity. You can learn it. And when in case you're working with a new client who are not using NPSP, you can go ahead and give them a suggestion saying, these are the features, these are the benefits you will get when you implement NPSP. You can be an advocate as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jyotsna, for telling me. I didn't even know that. And yeah, I will definitely look into that way. Thank you.
And thank you, Shilpa, for extending your support. Shilpa, she has some experience working on NPSP projects. It seems we can connect with her.
Yeah, and just,
Sure.
I just have a question. If you just have like a few more minutes. Okay.
Maybe that's. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi Bradley and Jyotsna. Yeah, it was a great discussion today. Thanks so much for it. And actually, I'm based in Belgium, Europe. I'm really looking forward to freelancing here. And I've already inquired over this. And I actually work with a nonprofit in the US currently. So my association with them has been great so far. And they are even, I've even pitched in to work for them, like if they could pay me. So being in Europe, now I have to charge them. So how do I do it? So do I have to set up a company here or register for a LLC in the US? That's my question.
Technically, it's up to you and them. Like so when you're can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Technically,
sorry, but was it clear? My question?
Yeah, your
Could
question was
properly?
clear, Shilpa. Yeah, your question was clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we heard you loud and clear. So really, now that you've established a relationship with them and they know who you are and they know that you do good work, it's really between you and them. And you could, it could be as simple as setting up a PayPal account and saying, hey, here's my PayPal handle. Can you send the funds over this way? That's perfectly fine and perfectly legal. It's up to them to report that payout, and it's up to you to report that payout as well on your taxes. And they should send you a tax form at the end of the year documenting the payment that was made. So it's really up to you. It's just some companies are uncomfortable paying via PayPal, or if their finance departments are sort of stringent or more structured, then they may say, we're not really going to pay our contractors via, some kind of third-party app. But if you're very comfortable with them and they're comfortable with you, I don't think that should be a problem. And the truth is, yeah, you could set up an account in your home country, but that's really more about asking them what they need in place in order to pay you and what would make it easier for them. And it's really up to their finance department what they're comfortable doing. But if you can work it out with them, then just ask them, you can do PayPal, you can set up a bank account in Belgium, and they can pay you that way. Or if that doesn't work, if they would please let you know what's the most advisable way for you to get paid. I would hope, given that you've already established a relationship, that you wouldn't have to go through the trouble of setting up a US company and then setting up a bank account. And it's not that it's difficult, it just takes time. And hopefully it's a hurdle that they're not going to make you go through.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Brad. Thank you for that. Actually, it cleared out so many things for me.
Thank you, Brad, and also for extending your patience and extending your time. I know we are a bit over time.
Yeah, you guys don't mind.
I will say this, and I'm fine if you have a final question, but I will say this: message me on LinkedIn. Anybody who's like, I had a question and I didn't get a chance to ask my question. Message me on LinkedIn. I will get back to you. So no trouble at all. You're not bothering me. So that goes out to everyone. If maybe you're a little introverted and you don't want to ask live, feel free to reach out to me, and that is perfectly fine.
Really appreciate that, Brad. Murali, you can go ahead.
Bradley, would you answer one final question?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an awesome discussion and presentation. I really appreciate your time. One thing I wanted to ask you, let's say you're solo, you're doing a freelancing or independent contractor, and you wanted to establish a company, and you do that, but then there's also the overheads in terms of having an accountant do your the bookkeeping, and you got to incorporate the company and stuff like that. So it's not an easy decision if you were to do an LLC or any other firm. But then we got to keep in mind the overheads in terms of bookkeeping or the taxes, and everything that comes with that. So how do you decide if you want to do an LLC or just do a 1099, but then also keeping in mind that if you wanted to do more business down the lane, how would you go about getting the right help, like a one-stop shop of somebody helping with your company setup, your bookkeeping or your payroll, everything like that. Do you have any ideas and thoughts? Because there are a lot of people who are one member contractors or LLCs or whatever are are interested to do that, you have any references or pointers in terms of how that can be done, please?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. So I keep in mind, I've been a single contractor LLC for 6 years now. And so I have a lot of experience with that. And of course, coaching other people into doing that as well. First, I'll say, sort of shake off any preconceived notions that you have about how difficult it is or how expensive it is and all those kind of things. So running my company, I'm very financially minded. I come from a family that, for our area, we didn't exactly grow up with a ton of money. So my parents taught me to be super frugal, and I hated spending a penny on anything that I didn't absolutely have to pay for. What you need to start a freelance company, if you decide, to start, I'll tell you, there's not a big difference between starting an LLC and not starting an LLC. Basically, you're going to need a computer. You're going to need internet service, and that's pretty much it. Well, you need Salesforce skill too, but that's up to you. So you need Salesforce skill, a computer, and internet service to get started. Now, if you layer on an LLC, you need to pay your registration fees to get the LLC, and you need to pay that registration fee once per year. There's no fee to have a bank account. That's completely free if you use any large national bank. The LLC fee, specifically for me in Florida, so I know this well, it's $130 a year to maintain my LLC in Florida. So I have to keep that in mind. Typically, that's about an hour of work to pay for that for the year. And even at an entry level role, that might be 3 or 4 hours of work to pay for that for a year at a lower rate. Then outside of that, you will not need an accountant for anything at all. All that's going to happen, if you want to pay an accountant a lot of money, I'll be your accountant, because all they're going to do is send you a 1099. Each client is going to send you a 1099 form at the end of the year. You're going to go on some free tax website like TurboTax, and it's going to say, do you have any 1099s to fill in? And you're going to go, yes. And it's going to go, okay, fill out the name of the company, their EIN number, and box number 7 for how much they paid you. And you're going to fill that in and hit submit, and you are done with doing your taxes for your LLC. Now, if you have some expenses you would like to put in, all you have to do is keep up with those in an Excel spreadsheet and keep your receipts. And if that's a computer, you can expense the computer. If that's a microphone or a laptop or a webcam or whatever it is, you can expense all those things at the end of the year, and it comes off. So I would say my taxes each year, you do have to pay quarterly taxes. Not a big deal. It takes about 5 minutes every quarter. So 4 times a year, spend about 5 minutes paying your estimated quarterly taxes. You learn the stuff as you go, but it's also all the stuff is included in the program if you sort of join our guided program, but just trying to give you free advice. You'll pay your quarterly estimated taxes. Basically what I do is once you understand about what your tax rate is, you just save that every time you get a paycheck. Say your tax rate is 15%, just take 15% and put it to the side in a different bank account. And then at the end of the quarter, just take all the money that's in that separate tax bank account and pay it for your estimated quarterly taxes, and you're good to go. At the end of the year, you'll submit any expenses that you have through a tool like TurboTax, and you'll be good to go. So for me personally, running a business, averaging, $170,000 to $220,000 a year with multiple clients, maybe any number of 10 to 15 separate clients I work with. I get those 10 to 15 1099s in the mail, put them in a stack, enter them in on TurboTax, submit those. It does take probably 2 to 3 hours to do my taxes at the end of the year. To me, that's not a big deal, and I'm good to go. So no accountant, no overhead, no payroll. If you pay somebody and you agree to pay them, all you've got to do is write them a check or, send them some money over PayPal and just document that. And, you're good to go. So it's not nearly as complex as you might make it out. Now, it's a lot of small things that can sound like a lot in the beginning, but when you're working through it day in and day out, it's really not that complicated.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, Bradley. That's sounds very simple, but then it also depends, if you want to say, keep it simple or complicated. For example, you also, can elect to have your LLC as an S corp, which means, there is more, compliance and stuff, probably you will need to do, and things like that probably will complicate. But then if you choose to, keep it simple, maybe less compliance, and as you said, you can either do a 1099 or, do any payroll, and you can leverage the company's payroll company to do your payroll. So I think
That's right.
this is really helpful.
Yeah, and you might elect for an S corp, but only when you're that would be like if you're looking to hire employees and supply healthcare to them and have full-time people at your disposal. And by that point, you're probably not going to mind too much the overhead, because at that point you're probably making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and at a point to hire full-time employees and supply healthcare and retirement plans for them and things like that. So I would definitely recommend just do an LLC, and if you decide you need more in the future, go from there. But there is no reason to start with anything more than a simple LLC in the US. Yep.
Thank you very much, Bradley.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great.
And thanks everyone for hanging around till the end. I know it's a long session today.
Yeah, that was a long time. You guys did great.
I really appreciate your time, Bradley. You have a
Yeah.
lot of patience.